Welcome to the Genius Talk podcast. I'm your host Atul Raj from the bestemailmarketer.com, and today we have Loretta Breuning with us. Loretta, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So, for our listeners who don't know you, can you tell them who you are and what do you do?
So, I have started something called the Inner Mammal Institute, which teaches people about the mammalian part of our brain, which controls the chemicals that make us feel good and bad. So, I was a college professor for 25 years in a different subject. And that's kind of important, I think, because people who are in this field do not say any of the things that I'm saying, and yet I think they're quite obvious. And I discovered them by studying animal behavior and research on the animal brain. Animals have the same chemicals, like you hear about dopamine and cortisol and serotonin. Animals have the exact same chemicals controlled by the same brain structures. And when you know how animals respond to these chemicals, it's so obvious that this is what we're doing underneath our verbal brain.
So, I'm curious, what inspired you to start Inner Mammal Institute?
So, I was a believer in academic psychology for most of my life because I grew up around a lot of unhappiness and I believed that they had the answer. Like everybody looks for the answer because we've inherited a brain that creates a lot of unhappiness. And yet, after raising my own children and having thousands of students, I lost confidence in academic psychology for so many reasons. And I started looking for more information, and talk about the brain, research on the brain, gets a lot more attention. But today with neuroscience, it's more focused on zeroing in with fMRI on one little spot. But some decades ago, it was on the chemicals, and I would read one little mention of how a chemical worked in an animal and another little mention of how a different chemical worked in monkeys, and nobody put it all together. So I started combing all of the books about animals and put together all of the research on animals because to me, it was so obvious that this explains why people are unhappy, why it's hard to manage your chemicals, and how we could be happier if we understood how they were meant to work.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what do most people misunderstood about inner mammal and brain chemicals like dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphin?
Sure. Well, most people misunderstand them because we're getting bad information. So the bad information that you get from sort of the medical world, of course, is that you should be happy all the time. And if you're not, it's a disorder and a pill will fix it. But then the bad information we get from the academic world is that animals are just having peace and joy all the time. And the only reason you're unhappy is because something has gone wrong with our society. So these are so widely repeated that hardly anybody questions them. But when you look at animal behavior, which has been documented for decades, animals have conflict all the time. They're constantly vying for higher position in the hierarchy. And the ones that succeed get a burst of happy brain chemical when they manage to rise in the hierarchy because natural selection built a brain that rewards you for behaviors that spread your genes. And when an animal rises in the hierarchy, they get more food and mating opportunity and they spread their genes. So this is sort of a violation of what nice people are supposed to think about life, but this is just simple biology.
Yeah. Hmm. Okay, so
Hmm.
what's one practical technique or habit our listener can use to manage their happy brain chemicals?
Sure. So the simple thing to know is that they're not designed to be on all the time. So anytime you get a spurt of happy chemicals, it's going to stop in a short time. So if you imagine a monkey is climbing a tree to get a banana, dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. But as soon as it gets the banana, the dopamine stops. So in entrepreneurial, you get it,
Yes.
right? In
Yeah, yeah.
entrepreneurial life, you go for a goal, you get a lot of dopamine. And then when you get the goal, the dopamine stops and you wonder what's wrong. And you
Yeah.
blame this or you blame that. Now, the other thing is that how do you then get more dopamine? Well, each brain is wired by its own past experience. So what makes me happy is wired by things that sparked my dopamine when I was young. What makes someone else happy is the same. And so that's why we all kind of repeat ourselves. Now, the bottom line, though, is that the brain quickly habituates to whatever reward you have, and then you take it for granted. So, for example, if a monkey gets a whole tree full of fruit, but in a few minutes they've eaten enough fruit, they've met their nutritional need, so the dopamine stops. And so, all these reasons is why it's hard to stay excited about something and why people often do harmful things to try to spark that feeling of excitement.
So how can someone not give in to chasing dopamine and can actually do the real thing that is fulfilling or improve their life?
Yeah. So first, I think awareness of how the brain works, because that tells you that nothing is wrong with you. It's meant to go up and down. And when it goes down, many people have a bad feeling. And that's why they rush into the next thing because they think that that dopamine droop is bad. But in fact, it's not bad. Only thing that makes it bad is that negative thoughts take over. A simple example would be once a monkey has enough food, then they start looking around for potential danger. Because when they're
Oh,
hungry, they're too busy eating. But then when their belly is full, it's like, okay, now I'll stop and look for danger. So that's what we do. As soon as we have a success, then we start looking for problems. And then our cortisol turns on. And then we just end up finding more and more evidence of problems. So we rush back into that next dopamine thing. So instead, I have what I call neutral, where you could think that you're in neutral gear, where you don't have to be rushing after the dopamine thing, but you don't have to run away and feel like you're under threat, but you're just neither up nor down. And that is a good state for the brain because that's when you're able to take in new information because you're not prejudging it as good or bad. And yet, I'm not saying that you should never seek dopamine because that is what makes you happy, but that you have to know that there are hundreds of ways to spark it, and we tend to abuse the one that we're already familiar with. So we need to just slow down and broaden our dopamine menu.
okay. So I'm curious about this. So in my case, like a couple of years ago, I just cut everything down, like everything that is giving me dopamine, like all kind of social media or any kind of bad food or like all the similar things. So it was I can say maybe my brain was hurting. It was a little bit painful. So why is that?
So dopamine is the good feeling that releases your energy. So when a lion sees a prey that it can catch, dopamine is released and that releases the energy that you need for the chase. So without dopamine, you don't have that energy. Okay. So that's why I said that we shouldn't pretend that we don't need it, but we just need to find ways of stimulating a little bit consistently rather than chasing after the big burst. But then there's another whole thing, which is dopamine is only one of the happy chemicals. And also we have serotonin and oxytocin, which are stimulated by meeting social needs, but very different social needs. So oxytocin is the feeling that you have support from others and and serotonin is the feeling that you have respect from others or social dominance.
Okay.
And this is not what your conscious brain is thinking, but it's a real feeling that, again, is easy to understand in the animal world, why we care so much about these things, even though we don't consciously choose to care about it, because in the animal world, it's really necessary for survival.
So if we cut all the dopamine things, I mean, that are stopping us from doing the important thing. So like you said, the first step is awareness. Then what should be the second step?
So, dopamine is not stopping you from doing the important thing. It's wasting your dopamine on useless activities because they are already wired in from your dopamine past. Instead, you could get
Yes.
dopamine from new activities, but your brain does not like to flow into new neural pathways. So, the electricity in your brain flows like water in a storm. It flows into the pathways that are already there, and they're built in your childhood and adolescence. So that's why we sort of get distracted by things that excited us when we were young. So the solution is I can take useful steps toward a useful goal, and that sparks my dopamine. But the first step is not fun. So it's getting yourself to take that small step and then another small step and another small step. And then you get a little bit of dopamine again and again and again. And that's the healthy way to get dopamine. But it's hard to get started unless that's the habit you had in your childhood, which is not very common because most children don't think that way.
Yeah. So after that, after some time of doing what you said, it will become there will be some kind of pattern, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
It becomes a habit. Neurons connect when you repeat this new behavior, but it's hard to get started. And that's why we have to give ourselves short run rewards for healthy steps. So, a simplistic example would be, let's say you're looking for jobs and you want to fill out 10 applications a day. And you say, okay, I'm going to do 2 applications before I have my first coffee. Then I'm going to do 2 more applications and watch a comedy video that feels uplifting. Then I'm going to do 2 more applications and enjoy a nice meal. And then 2 more applications and enjoy some entertainment away from my office. So we have to keep giving ourselves rewards, but healthy rewards for small steps. And that trains your brain to literally expect a reward from small steps. Because when you're filling out those job applications, it's hard to expect a reward.
Okay. So hmm. So the pattern is built by number of times you do the repetition, or okay, by repetition.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's both. It's the expectation of reward and the amount of repetition. So here's a simple example. If you are a person that was given candy when you were 5 years old, and like for a kid, like candy, wow, it tastes so good. So a big dopamine, it builds a big pathway in your brain. So then in the future, you're going to be like, I want candy. I want candy.
Yeah.
But if you are a child, 5 years old, and you are cooking with your mother and cooking many little steps, and then at the end of the cooking, then you have this big meal and it's fun and it's nice, then you learn to expect that many little steps will feel good. So that's the ideal. We're all trying to learn to take all those little steps. And the famous example of that is a person who wants to run a marathon. And you can't do that unless you train. So the person who runs a marathon is training every day. Why are they doing that? It doesn't feel good. They're doing it because in their brain, they expect a big reward when they run a marathon. It's the candy to them. For me, I don't want to run a marathon. I don't train. I don't like it at all because my brain is not wired with the expectation that running a marathon will change my life. And yet I love to write books. Now, other people hate to write books. So it's whatever we wired from our past dopamine, but that's so limiting that we all have to train ourselves to find new paths to dopamine so that we don't just do the same thing over and over, but we have to do it bigger and bigger for dopamine, which is, of course, why whether people drink too much or party too much or whatever, gamble too much, because whatever felt good a little bit, you want to do more and more and more.
Yeah. Okay. So like, who do you help in your institute?
It's just me and whoever I happen to be working with at that moment, just whether it's tech support or any kind of collaboration in social media. Nice people like you who ask good questions.
And okay, so can you tell about the people you actually help? Like, are the business owners, are the students? Like, who do you help?
So I would say the people who find me have been persuaded by the current terms used like depression and anxiety. Okay. And people who have enough time and incentive to read because I mostly write books. So that maybe limits a little bit people who read books. Although I create resources in all other kinds of formats. I have lots of videos and blogs and podcasts, but people who read books are usually motivated because they feel that they've stalled and
Yeah.
they want to put in the effort for personal development. That's a really small market, I think, because most people are looking for, I want a fast, easy solution. I want somebody to have the answer that's going to fix me. I want to blame the world for my unhappiness. But I'm lucky enough to get the people who are like, I want to do the work to change my thinking. Not maybe a huge percentage of the world, but they're really good people.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes they also depend on a pill to make them happy.
Depend on what?
Depends on a pill.
Pill. Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm not against pills, but
Yeah,
people often discover that it doesn't do as much as they thought. It has more of a downside than they
yeah.
thought. And so and often when that happens, the medical system tells you, well, you have to have more pills and more higher doses. And you
Mhm.
get into this cycle and you still never end up learning the skills you need to spark your happy chemicals the natural way.
Okay, so for our listeners who want to connect with you, want to get your book, or want to read your stuff, where can they go?
Sure. Well, my books are available everywhere, and there's even a special Indian edition at a lower price. So if you go to my website, innermammalinstitute.org/books, that has all of my books. My best known book that's translated into 18 languages is called Habits of a Happy Brain: Retrain Your Brain to Boost Your Serotonin, Dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphin levels. And that has all the science background. It's written in a very simple way, and it also has a step-by-step action plan.
Awesome, Loretta. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. It was really great
Sure.
chatting with you.
You too. And by the way, I just might mention for entrepreneurs. So on my website, I have a page of free resources for 5 specific issues. So one of them is entrepreneurship, business, and career. If you do innermammalinstitute.org/career, and lots of free resources of how animal brain information can help your career. Then I have another page, innermammalinstitute.org/anxiety. I have another one for parenting, innermammalinstitute.org/parents, teachers, and another one for addiction, innermammalinstitute.org/addiction.
Thank you so much for sharing your website.
Great. And also, if you get on my website, at the bottom of every page, there's a form get on my mailing list. And when you get on my mailing list, there's a free 5-day happy chemical jumpstart, which is 1 email a day for 5 days on each of 5 chemicals. 4 happy chemicals and 1 unhappy chemical.
Awesome. I will go and also join that mailing list today.
Please.
Not today, right now.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Innermammalinstitute.org, bottom of
Yeah,
every page.
good. Thank you, Loretta.